to the April 2024 Mode Shift member meeting. This is the second one this year that we're conducting in a hybrid format. So we got some people in the room, including our guest speakers. We've also got people joining online. The guest speakers this month.
I just don't know where to stay.
Yeah, if you're sort of within view of this, you're on screen from the point of view of the people joining online. That's where the camera's placed. If you're standing at the podium, as far as I can tell, you're not actually visible. So it depends whether you want your face to be visible or not, I guess, where you stand. But attention's kind of focused on here. So
Would you prefer it to be there?
maybe the people online could like put a message in the chat to weigh in. We've got one person monitoring the chat, I think.
Yes,
As
can
well
they
as the
hear-
way
can
to
they
go.
hear us? Can they hear you?
Yeah, that's another good question. Can they hear us?
Oh, no. Zoom in more.
Oh no, I did that wrong.
Okay, that's good. Oh, yeah, that's good. Zoom in maybe. Oh,
Zoom is the plus, I believe.
4 years of Zoom and we still gotta go through some of the classes.
Oh, I thought you were trying to.
I wasn't trying.
No,
That's okay.
My apologies.
oh, that's good. Up, oh. There.
I feel good about that.
It's coming off the top.
It's very close.
But they're sharing the screen. They're not watching that for content.
Yeah.
They don't wanna look at us.
Yeah, this is true.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thanks, Derek.
Right.
We're all on one side.
So we're gonna cluster in the corner over here. Again, if there are audio problems, send a message in the chat and we will troubleshoot them. Otherwise, we'll assume everything's rolling along smoothly. We have 3 speakers from the city of Omaha here tonight to talk about the comprehensive plan. And we're very excited about this work. So they are going to give maybe 30 minutes worth of presentation. They have told us that you are welcome to jump in with questions, don't have to save them up until the end. So that applies to people here in the room. And then if there are people joining online who have burning questions, then maybe just raise your hand. And we will call on you and get you connected that way. You should be able to, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to connect to this meeting. So we should be able to hear you. You don't have to like have everything relayed. All right, in that case, I will let our City of Omaha guests introduce themselves and take it away.
Thank you for the opportunity. Derek Miller, City of Omaha Planning, Manager of Long Range Planning.
I'm Sydney Embry. I'm a city planner on the comprehensive plan team, which is part of the long range planning team.
And I'm Lindsay Byers. I'm also on the comprehensive plan team with Derek, working in long range planning.
Just to set the context, then we'll get into the slides. Might I do this? Yeah. That's it. Got introductions. So raise your hands. Who knows what a comp plan is? Awesome. Thank you. Got a maybe back there. Also, I feel like I'm in church. Everybody's in the back. So basically, with the comp plan, it's a vision for the next 20 or so years, what Omaha will and can become. The existing plan, which we call our master plan, we're using different terminology. We're calling it comprehensive plan, like the rest of the state. Every other city in the state, in the country, called it comprehensive plan, but was approved in '95, and part of it was early '90s, but '95, '97 was about the time that the plan was created. So Omaha is very different today than it was back in the '90s. So state law requires cities, if they want to regulate land use through zoning, to have a comprehensive plan. There's different sections that's required. land use, transportation, energy element, and so on, housing, and parks and recreation and others. But as you can see, these are some of the other requirements. I think our master plan today actually goes above and beyond what the state requires. They keep adding other things that we need to add to it. One big piece that we talk a lot about, especially the last 10 years, is our ultimate growth. People will joke when I hear with me, when they hear that I'm a planner with the city of Omaha, that when's Omaha got to grow to Lincoln? And I say never, and they don't believe me. But by state law, Omaha is not allowed to cross county lines. So Harrison on the south, Dutch Hall on the north, and obviously we can't go into Iowa. And then one big piece of the puzzle here is this big this red squiggly line. That's the ridge line. West of the ridge line, that's about the Elkhorn River. It's all floodplain and floodway. And then to provide infrastructure to support continued suburban growth is not feasible. So and one day in the future, we will run out of land. So what you see in yellow is the current city limits. What you see in orangish color, it's kind of blurry, is SID or suburban development that's outside the city limits, so we will eventually annex. And then what you see in the green is areas that is left for development. So we project that to be fully built out by 2050 or so. So that's one big data point that we need to drive home with as many people as possible, because Omaha will run out of land, and that is what's remaining right there. We have a more detailed study of this analysis in our building development summary that's on our website. But basically, we got to start making decisions now on how to better accommodate growth in that green area, and then better accommodate growth inside the city. Yeah.
I've got a question about that. Just listening to you talk about Omaha running out of land, I've heard this theme before. Why is this even an issue or even a big deal? Because as I think about it, every other city has already run out of land. Boston doesn't grow any bigger. New York City doesn't grow any bigger. Like Boston is smaller in land area, I think, than Omaha, and they're never going to get any bigger.
Right.
So
the big issue there is what Omaha will look like in the future.
right.
Do we want to continue our suburban mentality and fill up the rest of what we have and then be done growing? And right now, one big piece of this is Omaha, through our powerful annexation statutes in state law, allows us to annex anything under 10,000 people without a vote of those people. So we can continue to grow and continue to add to our tax base. Once we fill up, unless we start to grow up and start to add density, which brings a lot of other great benefits to it, we won't be able to continue to grow like we have. We've had a great growth rate over the years compared to so many other cities that I would like to see continue. Because right now we keep annexing SIDs, brings that value, raises our tax base, but that's gonna stop. And so it's really forcing us to think what the future built form of Omaha will look like. Where can we add density?
While it does build our tax base, it also increases our maintenance responsibilities and costs. How do we make sure, without digging too deep into our pockets, how do we make sure that that additional maintenance cost is covered by the increased tax base?
Yeah, that's a big concern of mine, because over the last 15 years, we've annexed quite a bit of land, a lot of SIDs, a lot of unincorporated areas, and every day I consider become more and more concerned about operational maintenance. And you can really see it with our roads, especially in our climate. It's going to become very difficult in the future if we don't deal with the O&M issue. But the nice thing about adding density, you start to introduce better levels of transit, more orbits and things like that, then it becomes more cost effective.
Yeah, I have a question on the ridge line. How do you know that is boundary, a political boundary?
It's not a political boundary. It's a topographical boundary that we can't provide sewer and water over the bridge. It would just be way too expensive.
So, and that's stipulated how, like, in statute, or just that's what the city is?
It's our policy.
It's city policy that you're not gonna go beyond the ridge line.
Yeah.
But the city still has the 1 mile, like, I don't know what they call it, influence,
Yeah, we have our 3 mile
3 mile.
extraterritorial zone jurisdiction.
and that's beyond the ridge line.
It is.
Anyway,
There's a similar ridge line in Sarpy County, right, that they just voted to go beyond.
Yep.
Am I thinking of that right?
Yep, so all the communities came together and created a sewer, I don't know what they call it, sewer compact, so they all can fund this new sewer system, so they can continue to grow.
Yeah, so if just horizontal growth is the mindset going forward, there could be a future city council that decides that they don't want to abide by natural law and just go beyond that ridge line as they are doing in Sarpy County, like that's conceivable.
Yeah, the difference between that new area in Sarpy County and that area is not in floodplain, floodway.
Okay.
It's basically what they have today, it's just a ridge that,
Is inconvenient
yeah,
for
Yeah.
purposes of sewer.
Yeah.
Okay,
because of gravity flow.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why 40th Street matters.
Also west of the ridge line, is that prime agricultural land?
Yeah, there are some areas, and honestly, even further west from here, the Todd Valley in Saunders County is some of the best ag land. It's way away from us, but yeah, it's pretty good ag land. A lot of it's really sandy soil, that's why you see all the sand-filled lakes out there. Okay, with that.
Yeah, 4 slides and we hijacked it.
Thank you for that segue. I am really excited to take Sandpit Lake and go into branding. So I think what we can all acknowledge about a comp plan is that it is hard to make something tangible about it. It's a vision. The time horizon is very long, and we have a lot of good planning projects in the works already with trails being developed this summer and other initiatives that people can get excited about. Something like this is hard to sink your teeth into. So we did a lot of work early on. We worked with M-Space and Lovegren to develop a brand that would help people get excited about this and start to conceptualize it a little bit. So the brand is We Make Omaha. We worked very collaboratively with them to develop this so that it felt inclusive, that it felt place defined, that it's not just visioning for anywhere, it's visioning for Omaha. So we, as in all of us, that's a co-creative, collaborative process, and Omaha is our place to find peace. So we'd like to extend that to We Make Omaha Bikeable, We Make Omaha Beautiful, We Make Omaha Grow, all the different ways that we can kind of put this into action after the plan is developed. The main logo mark here is this 3 rings of concentric circles that have kind of a cobblestone look to them, so they feel very organic, they feel like the built form. And there are a couple different ways we think about this. This is growth, but it's also focusing in on different subjects. And I like to think of it as people in a circle facing each other in communication. I hope when we walk through the engagement strategy, you can really see that this is a different type of process, maybe than you've seen before. We've put a lot of energy and resources into making this feel different. Would love to hear your feedback as well as we look through these things, but basically the artwork for the brand is just this circular design. There's some line work as well that follows these patterns, but a comprehensive plan typically has required elements required by state law, as well as other topical areas that we might just put in based on our preference. So we'll organize some of our committees and a lot of the plan content around some key pillars that are down here at the bottom, and I get to rattle them off because I have them memorized now. Not to say that the comprehensive plan will end up in siloed chapters. I think one of our main complaints about the master plan right now is that it actually lives in separate pieces and they may not all talk to each other. So we want this to, at the end, be one cohesive, holistic, circular piece. But basically some of the topic areas that we'll be focusing in on are economic development, natural systems, mobility, parks and recreation, health systems, land use in the built form, arts, creativity, culture, and entertainment, and housing. And that's not to say that other things outside of that are not included. We rolled a lot of topics up into these because there's so many different cross-functional benefits. But yeah, we're excited. We're ordering all the promotional materials the next couple of weeks, so hope to see people wearing the shirts, hope to see our cards and murals start going up as we partner with some local artists. We'll also have quite a few physical stations around the community. We want to take this to the public. So we'll have some installations that feel like little rooms or offices that you can kind of drop into and be in the physical space to think about the future of our community. We also have a website. We're building a fully custom website working with our internal team. They have proven to be very helpful to us. They're very talented. They're very creative. Coming up with an accessible, ADA friendly, translated, collaborative space online where people can not only give their input, but learn more about the planning opportunities the opportunities they'll have to join in the planning process. And then also learn about planning topics, something that we would like this process to maybe fix or get rolling is just more sharing of information about how planning works, and what the public's role is in that process, the power that they have, and sharing some of that language, sharing the processes. What is zoning at a very simple level? What is land use? What does it mean when you help us make that decision? How do these processes work? What's the time frame that we have to do that? I think people get worn down when it's plan after plan after plan and they're not sure, oh, here comes the city again asking us for information. We're not sure where it's going. We want this to be transparent and we want it to feel, as Derek put it, co-educational, so that we can learn from the community, but also the community has the opportunity to kind of come into our space as well. So that's one of the functions of the website, but we're very excited about that.
Yeah, that's okay, no, because you're great at what you do. I can shift to this.
Yeah.
So one of the things that goes along with this, and I'll give kudos to my coworker here, she's very familiar with the IAP2 framework, and I stepped into this going the what and why should I care? It is really important, and it frames essentially the commitments that we're making to the public, which is that as we form this plan and we engage with you, we're going to do it in a collaborative fashion. Our job here is not to inform and tell you what we think Omaha should look like. The plan is for us to make sure that we are engaging and hearing your stories, hearing your values, and engaging with you in really, I think, actually fun and creative ways to help us get to what it is that people really care about. And then that collaborative thread is what we carry throughout the whole plan.
And something about this too is many plans will be at this level because that's the appropriate level to be at with the public. This is the promise that we're making, the impact on the decision that you have. We don't want to tell you that you're empowered to make the decision and then later on in the process be like, oh, actually, we don't like your input, and so never mind, we're gonna do what we want. So we've been very methodical about why we're selecting what we're selecting. You can access IAP2's resources online if you're curious about what that framework looks like. But generally, this is our promise to the public that we are going to collaborate with you to define what the future looks like. We are not going to listen to you and then decide what we think we want to hear. But you also don't have the power to actually change land use on your own. That would not be an appropriate promise for us to make to the public. So there's a lot more that goes into this. It's based on the ladder participation, which you may be familiar with. But all this to say, this is the framework we're working from. This is the gold standard. This is what many consultants use. This is used all over the country, and we want to bring it to this plan.
So what are you promising? Are you saying that the comprehensive plan is gonna replace the master plan?
I mean, it will. That's the
It will.
point of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and to be clear, one of the things that that we don't really outline here, but just to be clear on the way that the process will unfold and how the plan would come to be the plan that we would follow. We would collaboratively work on it with the public. We draft the plan. It is open for public. It gets voted on by the city council, right? And then it would get signed in by the mayor. So it's not, we publish it, put it online, and it's the plan, right? So there's definitely the civic engagement component of it that will make it the plan and codify it.
So the plans that are, things like the active mobility plan, the sustainability plan, are all those parts of this, or are they gonna be incorporated into this? Or are they separate entities that now we've got combating?
This is my favorite question. We don't want them to be combating. So many good conversations have happened recently. So many great plans have happened recently. None of this is to derail this. This is to take those and create that unifying vision. You can give more power to those plans. We can help create more clear prioritization around those plans. Nothing we put out should be in contradiction to any of that.
And again, like the point of a comprehensive plan, not just the only point, but the big point of the comprehensive plan is to dictate future land use. And so if you take things that are in the active mobility plan and in the housing affordability action plan, things that rely on land use to get going, this is the big one. This is the state law one. This is the one that our future land use map will follow. So this is a huge tool for us to actually be able to give those plans teeth. Not that they don't already, but it's a good way to roll them up into something and move forward.
A great example was our recent experiences with the housing affordability action plan, right? A lot of changes had to be made to allow for ADUs, and we are still limited in the types of housing that we can see. So a comprehensive plan can help us propel that forward as well.
So we've been talking to a lot of things that are not on the screen. These are our internal goals for reporting. We are holding ourselves to these throughout the engagement process. So this is not just for the data we're collecting, but we want to make sure that everyone who engages with the plan has experiences that are in line with these 4 goal areas. We're going to be reporting on these back to the community at the end of every phase. We'll have 6 phases of engagement. So we'll be asking people who participated in the plan, did you feel like this experience was equitable based on your background? Did you feel like it was represented? Is the data representative of Omaha? Was it accessible? And did you feel that we're being transparent with you about why we're collecting data, how we're collecting data, what's going to happen next, and how the process is going? Because this is a public process. The public should have eyes into where we're at in the phase. So
we make this look really clean and simplistic over 3 years, but there are a lot of details. But the main pieces to call out here is since Derek's been with city planning for a long time and he's been pushing for a long time for a revision of the master plan. So his pre-planning goes back quite a bit, but we joined in November and we had the opportunity to put our heads down and build out what we thought the whole project should look like and what we needed to get it done. We then need to go into an analysis. We need to take a look at what Omaha is on paper today, what the numbers tell us, what our growth projections look like. All of those plans that we've talked about have a good amount of data, but there's a lot of trends we can look at as well. So we're going to be clicking away doing those things while we are for about 2 years, also doing continuous community engagement across 6 phases that Sydney is going to go into a little bit more detail. They're very distinct phases that are going to allow us to collect input from the community that we can then feed into our plan as we develop it. So that's where you're going to see a lot of tasks start to happen concurrently as we go along. After we've got a good amount of input from the community about what they value, what their principles are, what direction they want to go in, we say scenario planning, what should that look like? If Omaha is going to grow, how should it grow, for example? And we go through activities with the community that help us visualize and think about what different patterns and scenarios could look like in Omaha so that we can come to informed decisions about things. And then we work on cementing that into the plan. In there, again, as I mentioned, is going to be periods where we do public input, where we can go back in and edit and draft the plan. And then once we get it signed, we then go into what can we do to update our code, our zoning code. So hopefully by the end of 2026, we will be delivering the new plan.
And what's not captured in this orange band is we can't show you now, but you'll see in the future, there are a lot of activities. A lot of activities planned that is above and beyond anything we've done in the past. So I'll just tell you that now. I mean, we've done some good engagement in the past on specific areas, but we haven't done a great job of engagement at the community-wide level.
Are there ways to fast track like public concerns and comments? Because I really like what I'm hearing from you and seeing here, where I'd love to hear that you're saying we want to get the community engagement, we want to funnel that feedback into actionable results. That's awesome. I'm looking at that timeline and I'm thinking, well, what about community engagement on a current event, like let's say the streetcar? That'll be done, I think, by 2027 or whatever.
Yeah, we want to take our time to do it right. We don't want to do it wrong. And it's to be honest, public engagement is a concern at all levels inside City Hall, including elected officials. We often struggle, how do we get people to come out? And on a particular topic like this, where it's not building apartments in your backyard, you're not going to participate because it's too big and lofty and it's too generalized. So we need to take the time over that time period to make sure we touch as many people or talk to as many people as we can and connect with as many people as we can. So it's representative of our community. So I'm with you. I'd love to get it quick and done, but we wouldn't do ourselves any favors.
I was wondering about the branding. Is the branding gonna only stay with the master plan, or is the planning department going to incorporate the circle?
Good question.
We'll see how we like it. If it ends up being something we are not sick of seeing orange all over the community for the next 3 years, then we want to keep it. I don't know.
But this is, the branding is particularly for the, it's gonna stay
For
there.
the
When you have the community engagement, are you gonna do it like the climate and resiliency plan where they broke it up into teams, like one group's working transportation, another working on waste management and so forth? Or are you just gonna have a whole series of meetings dealing with a whole aspect of the plan?
We'll get to that.
That's the next
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah, no, that's.
It's a transition, but not yet, not yet. Hold on.
Okay, so I think we should go into more depth, and it might just be me rattling off lists of things that we're gonna do, and I'll give some little quick explanations of what those things are. And then Lindsay, right after I'm done with that, is gonna talk about the committee structure. And I will just preview that, saying we see this as two parallel lines that are working together. So we've got public engagement, public input is going. We also have committees that are working, and these committees are specifically around certain focus areas. They're made up of different types of people who are being involved at different levels. So it might be people that we're just keeping informed to make sure that we're on the same page about planning, or it's technical people who really work in and they have their hands in whatever that focus area is. They're getting feedback from the public. We're funneling that information that we're getting at all through the phases. So with their meeting, they're not just meeting to meet, they're meeting to work on whatever they're hearing from the community. And then we're pushing that into more of an implementation piece. So I think we've talked about multiple times, we don't want this to be like, is safety important to you? Cool, thanks for telling us. Of course, safety is important. We're not gonna leave it at that level. We want to work on things like mobility. Like, how does that work? What does implementing the community's vision for mobility look like? Let's have not only the public weigh in, but let's have technical experts meet regularly to make sure that they can deliver on the community's goals and then give us that information. So even that piece is very co-creative. I hope I didn't steal your slide.
No, you didn't. And if I can like give you a boost, I would say that how we get to those things that the community can care about, because we know sometimes it's hard for you to articulate those things. And maybe we all can't talk about what our vision is, but maybe we can express something in story form.
Yes.
Because that's something that helps you build connections. And so many of the engagement activities that we build are around these principles that I want you to share, because
Well,
You crafted it and it's beautiful.
so we've had the benefit, and Lindsay did a lot of work too. We're just like, yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah,
you did a
yeah,
good job. Lindsay did a ton of work researching very recent comprehensive plans, and we've had the benefit that a lot of major cities, especially in the Midwest, have just come out of a comprehensive planning process, and most of them implemented what we learned from 2020 and from the explosion of DEIA and DEIJ initiatives to make sure that their engagement processes were equitable. And so a lot of them really boosted their engagement process, tried out new things.
And
So-
COVID online learning.
And
Kansas
COVID.
City did their comp plan through COVID.
Yep.
So all their engagement was practically online.
So we got to kind of pick through their processes and say what worked really well for you and is relevant to where we are and would work in our community. And we just picked out all the best and brightest pieces that we could find and then wove them together and said, how does this fit together? So we have a 6-phase engagement process. I think the next slide is that process, but largely, you can come back. These 3 pillar areas are where a lot of our engagement tactics center around. So either it's storytelling, where that's listening sessions, where we're sitting down with people one-on-one, asking about their experience. We have a lot of cool ideas about what story crafting is. Like, is it a hero's journey? Is it, is it overcoming adversity? Like, let's help them tell their stories in new ways so that it weaves into the larger story of Omaha and not just disparate stories that don't go anywhere. We also know that those stories are rich with data, so we can cross-tabulate different things. We can continue to use story formats throughout the process to help people engage with their community members and maybe explore experiences that they haven't thought about before. The mutual learning, that's the co-educating thing, being really transparent. And then the co-creation piece, we want as many things as possible to be creative and simple so that you can approach it with maybe very little knowledge of planning practices and still work in the fun way. Planning is a fun job. You get to think about things in like a multi-dimensional format, and that's really fun and colorful and creative, and we want that to be accessible to people. So, okay, now I'm ready. So phase 1, listening and learning, storytelling is huge here. We're doing direct listening sessions with community members in each council district, and that looks like a facilitated discussion around the future of Omaha. It's also interviews. We have a lofty goal of interviewing 150 people of various backgrounds, sitting down with them one-on-one, having a 30-minute conversation, documenting all of that data. We want to do some community workshops here, just to do some baseline visioning. A survey would go out at this point. I can't remember if I'm forgetting anything. I'm running down my Excel spreadsheet in my mind.
I know. And if you're not forgetting anything, the pause that happens before we proceed is our own internal system of checks and balances where we say, are we ready to move to the next phase?
Yeah.
Did we, if you go back to our 4 boxes, was this equitable? Was our engagement representative? Was it accessible? Have we been transparent? If we didn't hear from the communities that we need to hear from, if we didn't go to the places that they are, then we need to pause and go hear from them. We don't proceed. And have we made information available to you, the public, to help you understand what we've done and what we've learned and why we're ready to move to the next phase?
And we really think that's important because we are trying something new here, new-ish. I mean, like, we're not inventing new engagement tactics really, but this kind of like periodic pause, reflect, take a loop back, and then go to the community and make sure we're touching base with them. That accountability piece. That allows us to pivot. We have a plan, we have budgeted, we have allocated everything we need to do what we've planned to do. But if we need to shift, we've built in shift points where we can make sure that we don't leave people behind or we don't move on before the community's ready. There might be some healing that needs to happen in this first phase. We need to make sure that it happens. We're not going to move on until we get there. So, and that was something that worked really well in Minneapolis. If you want to look at their plan, you can go to their engagement records and look at what they did. That was something we referenced. Phase 2 is where we get colorful and creative. We have a lot of good ideas for here, namely another workshop. Online workshops, if you're not able to come in person, there's a lot of great tools where you can actually have that tactile experience, but online. We want to do games, like a physical game you get in a box, you can pick it up at a store, you can take it home, you can play it with your friends and family. You can either have a great planning experience there, or you can then send us your result of your game and we'll use that as input in the plan.
In Phoenix, they made a, you're the mayor for a day. So take it home and you get to be the mayor, how would you run the city?
We have a whole team at the office who's dedicated to doing these kind of gamified experiences. The other thing we want to do is the bus tours. So we would love to get people from all over the community together on a bus. And since we can't bus you to Charlotte or Minneapolis or San Francisco, we want to bus around our community, find really great examples of missing middle housing, of bike infrastructure. What could Omaha look like if we did all the good things that are already happening here, and just build some excitement and also help people understand our stories are so woven by our spatial environments. So let's understand each other's spatial environments. Then phase 3, we are going to bring on a consultant for some scenario planning. That is a highly technical planning skill. We don't have that in-house, and we really feel that we would benefit from having someone come in. So they'll kind of become an extension of our team, do that specific task, but we will be working again with the community to make sure that they're involved in that process. So that often looks like taking two scenarios, like Omaha grows by 50% and climate change gets worse. How does that happen in Omaha? What does that look like? What do we need to be prepared for? Sorry, hand in the back.
Yeah, is the consultant, will they need to be specifically approved by the council?
Yeah, so when we procure consultants, like something's going to council on Tuesday for this effort, it'll have to go through the city council for approval. That'll probably be this time next year, maybe a little earlier in the year.
For phase 3?
Yeah, I mean, to hire the consultant, I forget exactly when we're gonna start doing the scenario planning.
May, June,
Yeah, so we'll probably early in the year getting that consultant. on
February, we
board.
would think.
So RFP, you need to go out?
Probably the beginning of next year, if we stay on our track.
So then midpoint in this project, we are gonna go to city council with guiding principles. Guiding principles become the kind of North Stars for our different areas. Now you can't have multiple North Stars, but I can't think of a better metaphor right now. They're high level values that the community has that need to govern all of those other kind of technical areas. So we need to make sure that mobility and housing and energy are all speaking to guiding principle A. We will go to the city council with those and get those approved midway through the process. And that just gives us extra stability in the plan that we can move forward. Oh, this is a really long planning process, so it's good to have that kind of midpoint check-in and approval from the council.
And that approval from council will be after the election next year, because we have our local elections in April and May. So probably sometime in June. Can't make any promises. I'm just gonna say it's gonna be after the election.
So then phases 4, Roman numerals, wow, 4 through 6. This is where we're a little bit more heads down working on the plan, but that doesn't mean that they go away or that the public doesn't still have say. There's more open house, physical and online versions where you can kind of ground truth some of the things that we're coming up with, make sure that we're on the right path. We don't want to get to this point and have the community be like, what?
What did you do?
That's not what we thought it was gonna be. So hopefully by this point, they're kind of bored with the plan. But there's plenty of built-in checkpoints with the community. If it's open houses, if it's an open comment period, a lot of communities will actually allow the public to edit the document or like provide comments. And we want to make sure that it's available and transparent in that way as well. We can't say that every edit will be made, but it's good to have that piece. So that is the public engagement piece. Lindsay is now going to talk about that other kind of funnel where we're bouncing information back and forth, which is the committees.
So City of Omaha is running the initiative and our executive committee is there to help us make sure that we're making all the right moves and that we are broadly on track and they're supportive of the direction we're moving in. So that executive committee consists of the director of the planning department, Dave Fanslaw, Jacqueline Morrissey from the mayor's office, and the 2 assistant directors from the planning department, Eric England and Kelly Johnston Dorsey. So they are our team to help us and give us direction and guidance. Your comprehensive plan team, this is us plus one more person will be joining us. We've been interviewing and hopefully get to hire someone in the next month or so. But small but mighty team. We have the broad planning department and the rest of the city of Omaha that will certainly tap into for resources as the plan goes, but we as a team are 100% committed and dedicated to this and only this.
And one thing I'd like to say on that, it was this time last year that the mayor made the commitment. We pitched the idea of doing this to her last year at this time, and she agreed to hire 3 permanent positions And some of the other things that'll go along with this, but it shows a big commitment by the mayor for this effort. And we can probably talk about it a little bit later, but the comprehensive plan team's not gonna go away. They're gonna stay with us, and we're gonna do periodic updates every 5 years. We're not gonna wait 25, 30 years to do another update. So the mayor is, what I'm basically saying is the mayor has committed to put funding and expertise behind this.
I'm sorry, I can't read the yellow. What's the yellow say?
Oh, yeah, that does look a little, so that section says nonprofit partners. So the way that we're tackling public engagement, again, small team, mighty though we are, it's gonna be really difficult for us to make sure that we can get out to all areas of Omaha and to say, I think you need networks. You need people, sometimes we could be outsiders and we need insiders to help us along. And so what we did is we did issue an RFP and put it out and said, we, City of Omaha, could really use some assistance from a local, and we specified we wanted local nonprofit who has roots in the community that can help us build our community engagement and make sure that all of this great input that we're hearing from the community makes it into our committees and our conversations that we're having as we build the plan. So the way that we have this working out is the comprehensive plan team is there for everything. We're there in the committees as well. Our committees are gonna consist of the technical committees were those areas that Sydney mentioned at the beginning, land use, public health, etc. As she mentioned, those topics we know are gonna all intermingle. Public health is tied to housing, right? So those conversations may intersect, sometimes we'll bring groups together, but these nonprofit partners are going to be there to help us make sure that we're getting the right people in those conversations as well, that we have good people on our committees engaging with us. And they're gonna help us also tap into this expansive network of partners in the community, really well-functioning organizations such as yourself that have a network, you have an area that you care about, you live in the city. We want to be able to keep you informed and make sure that you guys are bringing your excitement, your interest, and being participants in the process as well. So they're gonna help us make sure that all of the networks in Omaha can stay informed about the plan. A big piece of it that we're gonna try out is also a community ambassador program. So again, we really spent some time thinking about this one. We know that there are people who get involved in community organizations, and we know that there are some people who maybe are a little bit more isolated, harder to get to. And we believe in a grassroots type of approach to make sure that those voices can be heard as well. And so we're gonna seek out ambassadors from each council district, 3 from each city council district. And we want you to nominate people. Who in your community is somebody that you think carries a good vision for the community, is a good voice, is a good network, and somebody that you would want to partner with the Omaha on our journey and be there, be an advocate, be a champion for the process, and help represent your neighborhood and your community in the discussions. So these nonprofit partners will also help us form those ambassadors and keep it running and make sure that we're all moving along in the collaborative engagement process together. Do you have anything?
Just something that hit my brain and I can't believe we didn't bring up sooner. Part of that accessibility piece that we're talking about, it's not just ADA, it's not just can you physically get in the building, can you read the text that's on the site, it's also things like childcare, transportation.
Yes.
Are we compensating people for their time? Because when people come to us as technical experts in the function of their job, they are getting paid for that. And so if you're coming to us as a technical expert in the function of someone who lives here, you should be compensated for your time. We don't want it to be like a part-time job. It would be a smaller stipend, and we're working that out with our funders to make sure that we can do that appropriately. But that's all part of that accessibility piece, and make sure that we're honoring people for their input and their knowledge.
Yeah, and I would say one of my personal motivations for wanting to do it, I suppose, and since you did a timeline, so 2 years ago, I was on campus reading Omaha's master plan as a student at UNO, switching careers to go into planning. And I was reading that our master plan, it was a committee of 50 people. We don't know, that were appointed by the mayor that helped to draft the plan. And we don't know what those voices brought, if they were listened to. And I just know that we can do so much better. So that's my personal belief that I think we can do a lot to build community trust by also targeting it this way. I hope, it's my hope.
One thing was mentioned, so we did issue an RFQ for some nonprofit partners that are in the community. This is actually good timing because that contract goes to council. I mean, it was introduced yesterday. It'll be on public hearing next Tuesday. So if you want to provide some support, that would be fantastic. And then it'll be voted on the week after that. And it's a different model than we've done in the past. We've done some things like this, but this is one of the things that we found in other communities, how they've done their comp plan process. They've engaged with nonprofits that are in the community, that have been in the community, and will help us amplify the voices of those parts of the community they work in.
And the way we're structuring that relationship too with those nonprofits is that they're really an extension of our team. We're not handing them a contract and saying, go do this and come back when you're done. We're gonna be working with them regularly. We all work out of the same tracking spreadsheet. We're kind of running this as an internal consultancy. So we're tracking time, we're tracking hours, we're tracking dollars, and
But we don't bill the same way.
we're not billing the same way. We want it to be collaborative. We're working with nonprofits that showed us in the process that they had the right relationships in the community. We're not just working with them for the sake of being a nonprofit.
And to that point, actually, we're also focusing on youth. So one of the things that really made me happy when I joined the city and taking this position was that Derek, he just accepted it as actually you stated it as it's gonna happen, that the youth have to be part of the plan. If we're talking about 20 years into the future, it's not right for us to not engage. I have a 12-year-old, I can attest, they can understand planning concepts and they can get really excited about it. So we have the opportunity as well, as much as I'm a mom, that doesn't mean that I know the best way to engage with all kids in the city. So we specifically with this have an opportunity to work with a nonprofit that can help us elevate and create an experience for the youth. One of the things that we learned early on, because we partnered with UNO to do the municipal administration class, public administration, they helped us. They did some research into community engagement and who are the underserved populations when it comes to community engagement and why. And youth is one of the areas that they identified. And one of the biggest reasons that youth say they don't get involved is because they feel that the adults don't want to listen to them or they don't make space for them. So we're making space. That's it. I know it's a lot.
I'd like to say, and I didn't say it at the top, we got this, I don't know when I got emailed for this request, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
We haven't launched yet. We're not ready to launch. We're not gonna launch until next month. Date to be TBD.
We're our soft.
Yeah, so it's kind of a soft launch. So the people that have heard this, the mayor, some more details from the mayor, of course, every city council member except for 2, and MAPPA, and I think that's it. Did we give this to anyone else?
We
Oh, and the
spoke to the Parks.
Yeah, the Parks Department. So this is kind of a soft launch. You guys are getting kind of a preview. One thing we didn't mention, Parks, for the first time ever, is developing a Parks master plan. That's gonna run concurrently with this. We're figuring out here in the near future how we can coordinate with their engagement to make sure we get, we don't wear people out, plus we're keeping the same messages and things like that. So to me, that's exciting. We've had a suburban Parks master plan, we have a Parks element of the existing master plan, but it's nothing that we haven't had, the Parks Department hasn't had a comprehensive plan for the future. Which, back to your point, Will, I stressed a lot to the parks director, we have to have an O&M component. Because if you look at our park, I'm getting off on a tangent, so I apologize, but if you look at any of our parks, except for the riverfront, you see the conditions out there. And as a citizen of Omaha, I'm kind of shouldn't say that I'm being recorded, but so anyway, long story short, long story long, that'll be a component of this process, and that parks plan will be approved. I'm not sure that it might be approved before.
It is, and so to your question, if we learn things throughout this process as we're engaging with the community that we think could be helpful elsewhere, one of our motivations is also to make sure that we're being efficient and actionable where we can, right? So we are talking to the Parks Department about all of the engagement we're doing and saying, how can we funnel that to you as well? There can't be silos with this.
We got an amen, brother, on the parks issue. Cindy online.
And
She's in the parks daily.
what the parks does for me, I think, I don't know of anyone that doesn't like parks. So, and I think parks gets people excited, so it'll actually pull more people to us, which is great. And we'll attend events at the same time. But that is a separate process, but very much coordinated.
So, because this is a transportation group, not to make it too siloed, but I'm thinking about the transportation aspect of this, and I'm guessing that there's gonna be a technical committee devoted to transportation.
Absolutely.
How are you going about forming that committee?
Yeah, it's still in the works right now.
So it'll be led by a city staff person, and that will just allow us to make sure that we're gathering all the information that's coming out of that. But it's not going to be just city people on the committee. So we'll be looking for, I'm not sure if we're gonna do a nominations process or if we'll do just kind of outreach to people who have shown leadership in the past around certain areas that we want to make sure we touch. The function of that is not fully built out because, as we said, we haven't started our contract with the partners that would be running those, but
our
That
same
phase.
goals of representativeness and equity and accessibility, all of those things apply to the committees as well.
actually, like originally we thought about having an equity committee, and then we were like, no, equity is not a silo, equity is across.
Everywhere.
We make sure that it's equitable no matter where you are in the process.
And so to your point, we'll keep in touch and just bug us. Because we'll want to build that committee like we did with the climate action plan. I don't know how many people were were you on the meeting last week? Was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of people. The format of that is not great because it's all online, but this will be, I would say, we can commit to in person, so you just have better discussions that way. But anyway, let's keep in touch about.
I don't have a particular question, I just have a comment that I appreciate that you talked earlier about looking at how other cities are approaching this, because Omaha is not the first city that has protected bike lanes or bus rapid transit or a streetcar, and yet it seems like each of those events happened as though it had never been done anywhere else before, and we were pioneering it, and so I appreciate that you're acknowledging that we are not necessarily on the bleeding edge of city design and that other cities have done the work that we can copy and emulate. So I appreciate that coming into it, because so many times that feels like Omaha feels like it's its own thing, and we're not in most respects. So I just appreciate that that was a thought in the plan.
And to turn that into a question, we've heard a little bit of what you found looking at other comprehensive plans. Is there anything else you'd like to mention that you really liked about what other cities have done recently with their comp plans?
The city.
Yeah, so Kansas City, we'll name a couple things because there are so many things about the comprehensive plan that we get excited about. Artwork and how Kansas City introduced even their comprehensive plan. They call it the KC Spirit Playbook, and it's based off of a Norman Rockwell painting that they completely revised for today. So instead of the farmer rolling up his sleeves, you've got a bunch of Kansas Cityans that are doing this. And so it's very grabbing and catchy, but as I mentioned, all of their community engagement was online. And so there are a lot of learnings we have in terms of how we can work with people who maybe can't show up in person. Minnesota and Minneapolis, if you look at their comprehensive plan, they are upfront and forward that we have a battle with equity and inequality in our city. And that is impacting housing, that's impacting everything, and it informs everything that we do. They put it out there, because it's what the community said they needed to address. And they came up with some really audacious decisions with their plan as well that they've had a little bit of a hard time, I think, legally trying to implement some things. They, I think, outlawed single family zoning. So interesting things there. I'm not talking about their recommendations, but they really listened to their community. Memphis, we looked at them for their community engagement strategy and how they partnered with nonprofits. So Derek mentioned he got us in touch with their planning director there. And for them, again, being able to access parts of the community because they hadn't done their master plan or their comprehensive plan for longer than us.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of trust issues with their community that they really had to overcome. So for them, they needed to partner with nonprofits so that they could even have people who would walk in the door to talk to them. So I think that spoke to us a lot.
And even beyond just the engagement, the design of the plan and the format of the plan and how accessible it is. The KC Spirit Playbook is a comp plan light, so you can actually access it online and you can go into all their goal areas and see all their actions, how those tie into implementation, what the time frame is for those things. It's a fully digital experience. It's also a print experience. And then Memphis had some really interesting ways that they simplified growth strategies. And so they turned it into a kind of a three-tier degree of change. How much should this area change in general? And that's how they did a lot of their future land use planning. So we're looking even beyond engagement to just how plain is the language and how accessible are these ideas and how easy are they to be like held.
Yeah, and if I can also add, we have to look forward to cutting edge technology. Like we have a plan that we say was written with data from the 80s and technology from the 90s, and we're using it in the 2020s. It feels like you're reading a PDF because you are. How can this plan be usable? And how can we make sure that it is something that lasts for that long? And that's also why we want to update it every 5 years.
And I got a question from Vince, who's online. Vince, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Or if not, I can ask it.
Yeah, sure. Heartland 2050 was a plan from MAPPA. I think it probably began in the 2013, 2014.
Okay, sorry, Vince. I don't know. Our audio is not great, so it's hard to hear you. So I'm just gonna read your question. But he's asking, is the Heartland 2050 plan from MAPPA in any kind of implementation mode? Or I guess how does it like connect to this at all?
So the core partner committee over there, top left, that's where we're going to be including other kind of like semi-government agencies. So MAPPA, OPPD, MUD, I think school districts
The
as well.
Papio River NRD.
Yeah, anybody who does this kind of like long-range planning on their own, the chamber, we want to make sure that we're all kind of tracking in the same direction. So we're not going to throw away any good work that's been done through Heartland 2050. We want to make sure that that's integrated into the plan as much as possible.
One thing that, I don't know if you mentioned or not, so stop me if we did, but one aspiration of mine at the end of the day, when this is done in 3 years or so, is that we have a shared vision, that we're all working in the same direction, pulling the same direction, because my experience in the city, 18 years, everyone's kind of doing their own thing. The chamber even had a plan a few years ago, it's still valid, it's the chamber's 2040 plan. And they acted like it was the plan, and it was not. Luckily, we have a good relationship with the chamber, we always have, I give them a hard time, but at the end of the day, we hope that this plan will be that shared vision. And a big part of that piece to get us there is the core partner committee.
Yeah. And I can't recall who it was that said something earlier, but my thought was, you said, thank you for, sharing it. And I thought, we shouldn't have to sell this to you because we're not selling anything to you. When this is done, we should have written a plan based off of what the community values and gives us good, smart, sound direction to build a sustainable future for Omaha. That's it. We shouldn't have to sell it.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a challenging question. You don't have to sell us on the importance of this plan. But part of public engagement is selling people on the belief that their input is going to be really significant to the final product. And I think that we all know that there's kind of a drift in Omaha toward a few key stakeholders ultimately making decisions about the future of the city. So I'm wondering what kinds of sort of process checks or structural checks are built into the way you've set this up to keep that sort of central drift from happening.
We've been asked several times, probably 4 or 5 times now at this point. So whose input weighs more? Like, are you gonna make sure that certain people's input weighs more because they know more? Because the public's input shouldn't weigh as much. And we have been like, no, everybody's input. At a baseline, if you live in Omaha, your input matters. If you're a technical expert, we might use your input in a different way, but you aren't getting our ear in a special way. You're not getting special access to us by being on a committee or by providing your input or being a partner. So that's built into the baseline of the plan that we have a kind of printable document somewhere that says nobody's experience is more important than someone else's, no matter what your level of expertise. Not that we don't want experts to be part of the plan. We just don't want people to feel like their input doesn't matter because they don't understand to begin with.
And if I can build on that, I made a joke about the IAP2 earlier, and what is this? I can tell you even just one small thing that I get out of it, which is the conversations that we have in a room is, should we even be calling this person a stakeholder if we're not calling the community stakeholders, their ambassadors? Does that send a message that somebody else has a stake and they don't? So I think that we understand the gravity and the importance, but I think that we also appreciate the continuous reminders to keep us accountable to it.
And we've said multiple times, like, we're not gonna solve public trust in one plan. Like, we have no expectations that by the end of this plan, everyone's gonna be like skipping through the daisy field together and like all excited about the same thing. That's not gonna happen. But if we can make 2 steps toward a shift in the drift, I think we'll feel like we were successful. And if we can deliver on those 4 promises that we have to the public, that those things that we want to report back on, I think we'll feel that it was a success. And I can't imagine that sticking to those kinds of guides would result in a worse off situation than we are now. But you're exactly right. We're up against a huge, you can read any article that came out over the last 5 years is not Omaha specific. People do not trust their government. People don't feel good about the future generally. And our public discourse is kind of spinning right now. And we know that that's the environment we're operating in. We want to do better, and this is kind of our step forward. So, yeah.
Well, it's been my experience in Omaha that developers run things. And for example, back in 2002, 2003, Lincoln put in impact fees. And so I was on an OTOC team working with Steve Jensen and wanting to promote more density. And we brought up some people to maybe have impact fees in Omaha. And we got shut down because of the pressure from the developers, because apparently that's something they didn't want. And so they just seem to have a lot of, and I'm kind of afraid how much influence they're gonna have on this.
So far, we don't have a developer committee.
Yeah.
I might have.
I don't
my
need one.
intentions
No.
too. We weren't here when that happened.
And if I can say, again, what I appreciate about the conversations that we have are, we want to write the plan the way that it needs to be written and fight those battles if people feel like they need to pick away at it. But hopefully what we're bringing to those discussions is all of those stories from the community, the video testimonials, the conversations, and all of that mixed with, guess who else in the community has these priorities? I believe that in some cases we're not far apart as it seems. I know that developers have interests sometimes that conflict with people, but I gotta believe that there are some things that can be accomplished that won't piss everybody off. And hopefully we can live somewhere there, but no, we don't have, we talked about committees and very specifically, we don't have, let's pull in representatives from development companies. When we get into conversations about land use and build form, is it appropriate for you to have conversations with people who are going to be able to help develop housing? Yeah. Should we have conversations with them about what limits you today? If this is what the community wants us to build, what limits you today? And how can it be made more easy for you? But at no point was I told that I need to bend to their will.
So I have like a follow-up question related to that. So you mentioned the core partner committee, like MAPPA, NRD, OPPD, MUD are basically public entities. They work for public entities. You also mentioned the chamber, which would basically bring the interests of developers and other businesses. You didn't mention any other private entities besides the chamber. So are there other entities that are part of that core committee? Or I understand the chamber is important, but to elevate them to the level of those other public entities seems to me to be taking business entities, developer interest to that higher level.
That committee is not at a collaborate level. We're not having special input sessions that those committees are bringing. That committee is more so we can make sure we're on the same page and we're moving in the same direction. We put the chamber in there because the chamber does plans and studies about economic development. They're a part of that conversation. We want to know what they're thinking about and what they're planning on putting out there, because people don't tend to see something come out from the chamber and something come out from the NRD and something come out from the city and think that those are three separate entities. They generally go, oh, that's like the government. So we want to make sure that the government or whatever non-government entities are doing those kind of planning things, that we know what's going on. We don't want this to be in a silo from the rest of the ecosystem of our city. So I hope that it didn't come off that we were giving certain entities more input opportunities by creating a special committee for them. That's not what's happening. That is more of a just being on the same page committee. Do you remember the spectrum of public engagement and we were going to collaborate with the public? We can operate at any level below that whenever we choose. That's appropriate. That fits our promise to the community. Inform is an appropriate area that we just stay informed. So that's the purpose of that.
And also, I would say, again, soft launch, right? So we're still, no one has gotten invitations to be on a committee yet. There's no meetings on calendars. This is, it is still being formed, and I think that's also why it's important for us to hear from you, because we know if it lands and if it doesn't.
Yeah, we're also going straight off the dome here, so we might be like missing people on that list just because that's what we remember off our doc. Yes.
You may or may not be able to answer this, but the 1995 master plan, how much of that has come to vision?
That's we had some of that. So the current master plan, we didn't get into this, but everything west of 144th that you see out there, that was the 95 master plan. The big piece of that policy was how to manage and accommodate suburban development, because in the 70s and 80s, it was just wild. It was like the Wild West. For planners, it was the Wild West. But so it was trying to control that suburban development. And honestly, it did a good job. What it didn't do, it mentions infill and urban design and things like that. That wasn't a focus of that plan. So now that we're running out of land, our focus is going to have to be infill. And a big piece of that puzzle is NIMBY, is not in my backyard. When we went through the TOD effort, created the TOD policy and code, I don't know how many community groups I went to along Dodge Street, and they kept telling me, Derek, over there. And then I'd get to the next one and go from Gifford Park to Dundee to Fair Acres, and they kept saying over there, over there. And if we keep saying that, we're not going to have any development. So back to your original question, the current master plan is really about how we could accommodate suburban growth. And we'll do this another time, but we'll talk about zoning in more depth. But the zoning is actually older than that. The zoning is 1987. And the zoning is supposed to be a tool of the comp plan to implement it, among other tools. And that is really suburban zoning code.
One of the things I see in Omaha that gets in the way of biking and walking, and even public transit to some degree, is the zoning. You know, I can't ride a bicycle conveniently and safely anywhere, to a grocery store, to a medical appointment, without taking a very circuitous route.
They go hand in hand. I mean, one specific thing related to multimodal or access is parking minimums. We regulated so much parking based upon guesses and copy and paste from other communities on how much parking we should have. And that was actually a topic of our housing action plan, but big picture thing that I want to leave you with too is I believe in we need to identify the place first, and then everything else around that will serve that. Unfortunately, it's really, we're dominated by our mode of transportation. That's the community that's created. So I think we need to say, what kind of place do we want? And everything follows that. So basically, multimodal is second. It's really what kind of place do you want? Did you have a question in the back?
I had a time check because it's exactly 8:15, which is
We
the.
used a lot of your time up, we're sorry.
Sorry, you guys said
No,
30
we
minutes.
love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been great. But I want to respect your time and not, you know, keep you here all night.
I'm sorry, because every time we've given this presentation, it gets longer.
Yeah.
I guess you let us ask
Yeah,
questions
you're gonna have
during
to-
it, so that made it a little.
We just
more-
keep one more thinking, like, oh, one thing we didn't mention is, oh,
Yeah.
So what's the rollout gonna look like? Are you gonna be using more branding? Cause I'm really interested in your branding template. Appreciate that slide. At this point, I wanna know what those circles represent, cause that's gonna help me conceptualize your
I just sort of.
priorities.
So this is the main one right here. Then I didn't really talk about this, but we don't wanna do like art and iconography because like a bicycle means bicycle, that is overdone. We want the city to have a good library of locally sourced stock photography that features Omahans. We want this to be photography forward. So this like circle thing is called a frame, and it will actually frame the actions of somebody doing something toward what the future, the vision for Omaha looks like. So in this case, like this is actually an old image. The circle should be around her hands. That you'll kind of see that. So that's the frame. And then when there's a frame specific to, and there's an action specific to one of these focus areas, and we'll use these. So this one's housing. It's meant to represent kind of like a door frame, like the kind of stone that holds up the whole door. This one looks like a brush stroke. That's the arts and entertainment one. Land use in the built form is 3 different weighted lines. The health system ones looks kind of like, I can't remember the name of it, like the snake around the. Thank you. Parks and recreation is this kind of like swoosh mark, so it means like activity. But it could also look like a water droplet, so that's like water access. Mobility looks like these dashed lines that are all concentric for a bicycle wheel.
Roundabout.
Natural systems is a lot of, pulls a lot together, but it's the land use component, but it's also things like sustainability and making sure that we're respecting the natural form of our land, the topography of the land. And economic development is this kind of like equal sign that's kind of expanding in a burst. So that's what all of these mean. I have been working on more stuff that's branded. The shirt design is finished. We also have kind of like a little enamel camp mug that has the circle on it. We'll have stickers. We're gonna have fancy name tags and business cards. We're looking at little kind of event bags, like clear event bags, so you can take them to concerts or things that are happening throughout the next couple of years.
Something usable, not throw away. That was our
Yeah.
big.
We don't want any trash. We don't want any pens. We don't want any drink koozies. We want things that you want to keep around in your home and maybe remember fondly the time that you participated in this planning effort and gave forward to the future of your community. So yes, we would love to, as an outreach partner, if we can give you some things to kind of distribute, this starts showing up and people are like, oh, what's that cool circle on your mug? And you can talk to them about the plan.
When it's time for board game in a box time, you guys wanna grab one for mode shifts.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.